Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with the Pathfinder School, and what we're going to do this morning is another project in our green woodworking series. And we are working on small projects as we go and working up in complexity and working with different types of wood to make different projects with the hand tools that we've selected. And now that we have augers, we can bore holes. So the next tool that we're going to make, the next wooden tool we're going to make, is going to be a simple wooden pulley system. We're going to make a pair of pulleys so that we can compound the leverage that we have on these pulleys so that we can cut the weight in half of something that we're trying to lift with these pulleys. If we have one pulley in the system and the rope is tied directly to an object that we're lifting up, you're actually lifting the same amount of weight with this rope. But what that allows you to do is pull your force downward, and it helps lift that weight up. It does not displace any of the weight or change the amount of weight that you're pulling with the rope, because you've only got one pulley. However, if you add a second pulley to the system, one connected to a solid object and one connected from the bottom to the object you're trying to lift, you cut the weight that you're trying to pull in half. So we're going to make a pair of these wooden pulleys today. I'm going to show you how to make them. It's very, very simple. It takes very limited tools to make them. And I'm going to show you a special knot that you use to set this pulley up so that you don't have to enclose this pulley or put any kind of framing on it. You can just use the axle itself and the pulley, and it will work very simply with a special knot called a cat's paw in your rope. Stay with me. Okay, so let's discuss a few things here real fast before we get started, because what we're going to do is the two components that we're going to make is we're going to make the pulley itself and the axle. And we're going to make the axle out of hardwood, and we're going to make the pulley out of a softer wood for right now for this project. And we've got a piece of poplar here and a piece of ash. Okay, so we're going to use ash on the inside for our axle, which will make it nice and strong. And then we're going to use a softer wood for our pulley, which will make it easy to carve. Okay, what I've done is I've just taken a piece of stock here that I've cut off, and I've drawn a line around it with a marker. You could use your knife blade or whatever to score that line, just to give me a guide of where I want to put my notch, like this one. Okay, will be right there in that line. So these pulleys will be about the same size when I'm finished. Now, let's set those aside for a minute. We're going to use our foot vise again today to hold our material while we're working on it. And this foot vise is very good for a lot of these smaller projects. You're going to want to match your kit to the projects that you plan to work on. One of the main tools that we're going to use today that I'm going to show you to make this cutout is going to be a froe. And a froe can be a very precision tool if it's used correctly and if you have the right froe. Now, this froe is one that I recently purchased. I had this made by Brad Holman at Holman Blacksmithing, and he charged me $30 for this froe, and I just use an old broken shovel handle on the inside of it, and it works out perfect. But this is a major league froe. This thing is made for riving things like shingles or splits and slats for boats or the side of a building and things like that. This would not be something you'd want to use too much for small projects because it just has a lot of beef to it. But it's great for those bigger projects. So when you're building your kit, decide on those types of things, and maybe you want more than one froe. And for me, I made this froe about 2 or 3 years ago from a horseshoe rasp. And this froe's lasted me a long time. You can see that it's much shorter, it's also much lighter, and it's much thinner. But this froe will do a lot of fine tasks that I might not want to use my knife for. And it will also riv finer materials like for basket making or chair seat weaving and things like that. You can riv those finer materials with this froe a little easier than you can with this. And a froe is not just a splitting tool. You have to understand that the purpose for this froe is for splitting and then levering or levering those pieces to split something down along its grain. This is not something that's just made for cutting splits off firewood and things like that. It's actually made to split things down the grain by opening them up once the froe is inside of them. You can also use your froe to do quite a bit of certain carving tasks that are very simple, and that's what we're going to do today. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our stock and we're just going to put it in our vise right here in front of us. And I'll try to kind of get this to where you guys can see it. If I have to, I'll move the camera. And you can see that nail is holding this where it needs to be, and then I can put my foot in the other end, just like this. And all I have to do is rest my foot down there, and it's going to hold that stock right where I want it. Okay? Now, all I'm going to do is come in here and first of all score a line with my smaller mallet and my smaller froe. So I'm just going to walk this line and try to get an equal cut around this piece. So two good taps all the way around, scoring that line. And I'm back to the beginning now. Now, once I have that line scored around my piece, I'm just going to cut a wedge out of this thing on both sides. So I'll start on one side and go around, start on the other side, and we're going to make a beaver chew out of this thing. It's going to look just like a tree that a beaver's been chewing on when we're done. And then we'll smooth it up with the froe in the end. I'm going to move this camera so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing. So I'm just going to come in here at an angle. I need to move my workpiece out a little bit. I can, easy enough. I'm going to come in here at about a 45-degree angle and just chew right into that line. This is the beauty of a small froe like this, is you can manipulate it real easy to get what you want. You're not beating on your knife for no reason, although you could use your knife for this. In an emergency, you could use your knife for this, no problem. But if you've got the froe, you don't need to risk using your knife. Now, get to the other side. Manipulate things a little bit, just like this. Come in from the other side with your mallet. Now we're going to get those chips are going to get knocked out of there that we just made. Now we're just going to come in here, and everywhere you see these U's that we've put in here, now we're just going to come in here and clean those up with our froe, just like that. And we can get them from both sides. We can turn the work around to get the other side again. So we'll just go around this one first, get those chews out of there. All those little U's where that point is. Again, I relate a lot of this stuff to napping stone, because there's a lot of building platforms that you're going to use for your next stroke and things like that, just like when you're napping flint. Every time you take out a chip, you've created some type of platform or ridge for the next one. And it's the same thing with this. So now we're going to come in here and get the other side. And a smaller froe like this, you can really manipulate it and use it for a carving tool. You could do this same thing with a chisel, but we haven't added a chisel to our kit yet. So we're trying to see all the things that we can do with the tools that we have, and only use new tools or add new tools when the necessity dictates it as we build our kit. I'm just kind of going through here and cleaning up any last minute chips out of there. That's not too bad. Okay, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You're just going to be riding rope in there, and the rope will wear it down as it goes as well, especially with this soft wood. Now, we have the makings of our pulley. We have this part completed. Now we need to cut it off the same length as this one and bore a hole into it on center with an auger. Okay, so boring a hole in this thing. What we're going to do is we're going to take this and bury it in the stump just like this. And that's going to create a fence. We're going to put this piece up against that fence and slide a wedge in here to raise this piece up right into the indention. Just like that. And then we're going to stand on it just like we did any other time with the foot vise. We're going to put that thing just like that, and that's going to hold it still for us so that we can auger out our hole the rest of the way. Okay, at this point it's just turning this into this, which means you've got some carving to do. So just start taking it off, use those power strokes, pull meat off of that thing, fasten it all the way around, and knock the facets down into a round. You just go a little at a time until you get what you need. You get this side knocked down a ways. You can start knocking meat off the other side. Alright, so once you got your pegs cut down, it's just a matter of putting them in evenly. I don't mind that it's a little bit tapered on one side and tight. That just gives me a better hold. This one's pretty tight going in. Let's see what we got here. Pretty even. Now, some of the bark came off of this one while we were messing with it. That's really not a big deal. That bark doesn't need to be there anyway. We could shear cut the rest of that off of there, or just chip it off and not worry too much about it. If we're trying to keep up appearances. Otherwise, we can just wait till it falls off. It really doesn't really matter. For uniform's sake, I'm just going to cut it off of this one and leave it on the other one. The other one, the bark didn't chip off of it at all. This piece of wood was probably a little drier. Okay, now we got our two pulleys. They're two different sizes. One's a little bigger than the other one. That's not a big deal either. The grooves are about the same size. And we can dress these grooves up anytime we want to. We can come here with a knife and dress these grooves up, or we can come back in with the fro and dress these grooves up if you got a spot you don't like. I had a spot right there I saw in the end that I didn't really like. So I'm just going to come in there with a thumb push and shear that off. And your rope is going to wear that groove in there anyway as you go, probably. Alright, so there's our two pulleys. Now, let's talk about how to set these up as pulleys to use them. All right, I'm going to try to keep this camera pretty tight on this so you can see it. All I have is a loop of rope here, about 1 foot long. And I'm going to fold it over on itself as if I were making a lark's head knot, like this. That would be a lark's head knot, okay? But I'm not going to make a lark's head knot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one of these butterfly wings here, and I'm going to twist them 3 times. Or 4. It really doesn't matter. I just want this fairly tight at the bottom. And I'm going to put my loop through that. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to twist this one the same direction and the same number of times. And put it over the top, like that. And if I've got them twisted even, when I pull on it, it should be evened up. If it's not, I've got more twists in one side than the other. Okay, there we go. That's what I want right there. Now this is going to let my pulley run inside this rope just like this. And we're not doing anything high speed, so we don't have to worry about it wearing through the rope because we're doing something at high revolutions. We're doing slow pulling. Once we have that tied in and we're satisfied with that, we've got an area right here between our knot, our cat's paw, which is what this knot's called, is a cat's paw. We've got a space between that cat's paw and our upper knot right here. And we've got 2 stop knots tied in the top. And we would trap a jam knot right here from the top or bottom. That was tied to either what we were lifting up to or what we're using at the top and what we're lifting from the bottom, depending on where this pulley is stationed. So up here in the top, I've just got a jam knot tied in here. I'm going to come in and connect that right there between exactly what we're talking about. Right there between everything. Between the cat's paw and our knot. And that becomes our pulley. Alright, when we pull down on that, it's going to hold friction right here in the cat's paw and going to give us our U. And that's going to trap our pulley on the axle, just like that. Alright, now let's put our second one on something that we're going to lift. Okay, so now we have a 125 pound anvil sitting here on a 4x4 stand. So you got a couple 100 pounds sitting there with a chain wrapped around it. I have one pulley that is attached to that anvil here in the center, on a cat's paw here, jam knot here. This rope is doubled over, so it's tied to the top. It comes down through this pulley, goes up and goes through the pulley that we have at the top, right here. I hope I got that in the camera. I think I did. Raise that up just a little bit so you can see it if you can. Now we have compounded the leverage for lifting. So at this point we should be able to step off to the side, make sure our pulleys are in line, everything is taut and even. We should be able to lift this much easier than we could have before. Okay guys, well I'm Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School, and hope you enjoyed this simple project today in green woodworking. Something that you can do very easily. All you have to have is a single auger bit in your kit, and you can replicate this easy enough with just your saw and your knife, and it will help you lift loads that may otherwise prove to be difficult. I appreciate your views, I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks guys.